Wow, wow. Oh my gosh. We have such an incredible guest today. I am over the moon that we're going to be talking to Lady Free Thinker herself. And this woman, let me tell you, she is a powerhouse. I mean, the millions and millions and millions of petition signatures that she has gathered are really changing the world and speaking up and saving voiceless animals. Lady Freethinker, aka the one and only Nina Jackal, joins us with a really gruesome subject. How do we stop the dog meat trade in Sumatra? I'm going to show some photos. I carefully curated them so they're not too graphic because it's a graphic subject. But we have to talk about it. Turning a blind eye doesn't stop the suffering. So, how did you find out about this? What is your investigation, and what can we all do to stop the dog meat trade in Sumatra?
Yeah. Hi, Jane. First of all, thank you for the warm intro. It's fantastic to be here on your show. So the dog meat trade has been happening in Indonesia for a while, and we actually work with a local organization on the ground there who's really in the thick of it, in an area in Sumatra where the dog meat trade is especially prevalent. We were able to send an investigator there to gain access to a number of facilities in the dog meat trade, including a dog meat market, dog meat restaurants, and we were even able to track a dog transport truck that drives dogs more than 17 hours actually, with no food, no water, to a restaurant that eventually slaughters them. The footage is horrific. I understand why you're not showing it. It's hard enough just to see the photos, which obviously only tell part of the story, but it's really all you need to see to know the suffering that these dogs are enduring.
It's beyond comprehension. And of course, what we say is if you look at this and you're horrified, then remember that it's no different with pigs or chickens or cows or turkeys or goats or lambs. They are just like your dogs or cats. And when you see this and you're horrified, as I am, as we all must be, just remember that before we point the finger at another country and say, we don't do that here, take a look at some images from the Western world. That's just an undercover investigation from a Canadian facility. And
Yeah.
of course, the people who shot this video, instead of getting an award, were prosecuted. So let's not make this a cultural thing, because every culture has its terrible problems. But let's do what we can to help Nina Jackal stop this. And you have this extraordinary ability to mobilize people, to send a message. Who are you sending a message to? And I have to say that when I first saw this, I didn't know where Sumatra was. And I looked it up. The Republic of Indonesia is an island nation in Southeast Asia between the Indian and Pacific Oceans with more than 17,000 islands, including Sumatra, which happens to be a hot tourist destination. So they should certainly consider that if this imagery is getting out to the public, that could hurt tourism, because always follow the money. If they're going to say, well, what's the first excuse for cruelty? Oh, jobs. Well, you're going to lose a lot of tourism jobs if this continues.
Exactly. And Sumatra in particular is really known for its exotic wildlife. It's a tourist destination for people who love animals and who love nature. And the majority of them just don't know that this is going on. But I hope that with this footage, people will realize what's happening there, and they will join us in speaking out to stop this. And just to reiterate, Jane, what you said, this type of cruelty happens every day in the United States, in Canada, in every Western nation on factory farms, and no species, whether it's a dog or a pig or a chicken, deserves to suffer in this way. Our particular investigation in Sumatra involves dogs, but these could be any animals anywhere, and they would not deserve this suffering.
So what do you do? How do you put pressure on these governments? I mean, where is this petition going? How many signatures have you raised? What's the strategy? Because I know you're very effective, and we're going to talk about some of your victories in a minute.
Yeah, so we actually have a couple of different petition targets. And first of all, we're petitioning the governors of Sumatra. There are multiple governors, and we want them to end the dog meat trade in the first place. We're also petitioning the Indonesian agriculture quarantine agency, because we believe that the transport of these dogs that we witnessed was illegal. There are certain requirements. These people are violating health code. They had no quarantine paperwork that we're aware of. And for dogs to be transported in this condition without the proper paperwork, these were sick dogs in their own excrement. This is extremely unhealthy. And we believe that the quarantine agency should do its job in investigating the transport of these trucks and shutting down any illegal operations. And then additionally, we would like to see those regions in Sumatra that have already banned the dog meat trade, and there are some, for example, the city of Medan, we want them to enforce the ban, because the reality is that people in Sumatra do want to see this end. People who live there, citizens there, they don't want to see this cruelty either. And the pressure from them, as well as outsiders like us, like tourists who have dollars to spend in Sumatra, it has already succeeded in some regional bans. But whether they're being enforced or not is questionable at best. So it's really a multi-pronged approach in, first of all, stopping the illegal aspects of this, as well as encouraging authorities to pass new legislation that will just stop this from happening completely.
Absolutely. And I have to say that in researching this story, I was right next to my dogs, and I looked at them and I thought, my God, what I can't even imagine, because these are companion animals. Every cruelty is horrific. Every cruelty to any animal is absolutely unimaginable. But it just so happened that I have these two rescues. This is Sunday, and you'll meet Wednesday in a little bit. And Sunday went to your gala,
Yes.
and she was on the red carpet. And
She was a star.
Thank you for allowing us to bring Wednesday, and Sunday. But look at her, and then look at this. I mean, this is beyond comprehension. We have to stop it. It's just unbelievable. We've got a caller, Michelle in Los Angeles. Your question or thought for Lady Freethinker?
Hi, thank you so much. This is horrific, and I'm just wondering, the countries where this dog meat is being sold, is there a majority of people that want this? Is there a demand? And how is this regulated, and how is this even possible?
Right. It is not a majority. Most people do not eat dogs. It's a very small minority. This is not something that is culturally popular. And in fact, many people in these regions are fighting to stop it, just as we are. Unfortunately, the laws in most regions have yet to catch up. So dogs are still considered livestock. And despite that legality, there are still laws being broken, as with the transport trucks, these health laws that are putting people at risk. With dogs in particular, you have rabies risk, and there are other various reasons why this should be shut down, despite dogs being classified as livestock. The good news is that we are seeing progress. We're seeing more and more local citizens speak out against this. We're seeing more and more laws being passed, but it still persists, and it's still disturbingly pervasive, and even happening out in the open. Our investigator actually witnessed a dog being, burned on the sidewalk just out in the street. I'm sorry to get so graphic. I know it's disturbing, but it's still not hidden, which tells you that there is a level of acceptance, or at least feeling that the law won't do anything to stop it. And that's really what we're trying to change.
Yes. And again, you can go to Lady Freethinker, visit Lady Freethinker, and get involved with a variety of petition campaigns. But particularly this one, all you have to do is go to ladyfreethinker.org, and it's right there. We've got another caller, and that caller is Nilofar, in Dallas, Texas. Nilofar, your question or thought for Lady Freethinker?
Hi, thank you so much for the very difficult, steadfast work that you're doing on this. Indonesia is a Muslim country, and as a Muslim nation, dogs are considered filthy, and you're not supposed to consume them. So is this a fairly new horrific cruelty that Indonesia has engaged in because of profits and people's taste buds changing? And the next question really quickly is, where do they get these dogs from, and how do they capture them? Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. So those are great questions. And as I said, it's not pervasive. Most people in these countries don't eat dogs, and it's not traditional, as far as I know, in Indonesia. However, as dogs become pets and companion animals, they also become more popular in, I hate to say cuisine, but there's more availability. And these dogs are generally from the streets. These are abandoned animals. These dogs are just basically bunched up and sold as meat. And there's opportunity now, where in the past, when dogs were not companion animals, that opportunity did not exist. It's a way to earn income with very little investment, if all you have to do is go grab some dogs that were abandoned and then sell them for meat. And I believe that has led to the pervasiveness of this issue.
I look at this photo, and it crushes me. It just crushes me. And this is Wednesday. This is my newest rescue. And somebody was trying to dump her at a shelter, a rescue organization. And the shelter said, "We have no room. Just take her back." And so the shelter organization took her in, and I started out as a foster, and I'm a failed foster. But look at this baby. She is so docile and sweet. The idea, it's beyond comprehension. We've got a lot of callers. This is a hot button topic. Lindsay and Tarzana, your question or thought for Lady Freethinker?
Well, I happened to be going through Facebook and saw that image. Didn't know it was what show it was on or anything, and it just felt like somebody punched me in the gut. And then I was so happy to see that, Jane, that you're doing a show about it. And Lady Freethinker, thank you so much for all you do. I would love to know, I've been following this story since about 2016. Actually, the dog meat trade was the catalyst for me going vegan, because I started to pay attention to what was happening to animals through a friend of mine, and it was the beginning of my journey. So I guess if this hasn't been asked yet, what is the latest? I know it's so difficult because it's a cultural issue as well, and there's a lot of, not gangs, but gangs on steroids running these operations, corruption. So what is the latest on this, if you've not already covered that? And thank you so much for taking action on this issue.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's a good question. So we have just released this investigation. This is very new, and we're just starting to put that pressure on. So while I don't have any updates yet, please do stay tuned, because we are absolutely hoping to see some action from this and some response from the government to stop it. If you haven't yet, please sign the petition. Every signature helps make a difference, and then we can present those signatures to the authorities to show them that the public is horrified by this, they care, they want this to stop.
How many signatures have you gotten already?
Let's see. I have to check.
And by the way, there is a link to sign, whether you're watching this on Unchained TV streaming app, whether you're watching it on Twitter, whether you're watching it on YouTube, whether you're watching it on Facebook, there is a link to the petition, or just go to ladyfreethinker.org and it's right there on the homepage, because
Right.
it's her latest campaign. And if you
It
want to
is.
traumatize yourself, you can also watch the video, which I watched, sandwiched between two dogs, and I was like, I can't put this up. It's too awful. That's why you're looking at just photos, which is bad enough. How many signatures have you gotten so far?
It is. So our newest petition has a couple of thousand. Our main petition for Sumatra has about 51,000 signatures.
Wow.
Yeah, so we actually have two petitions, and one is to shut down the dog meat trade and live animal markets, because I want to add that at these markets, we don't just see dogs, we see monkeys, we see chickens, we see a whole variety of animals. I mean, these are basically wet markets that happen to have dogs. So our petition to shut down these markets that sell the dogs as well as other animals has 51,000 signatures. Our latest petition to stop the transport of the dogs specifically has a couple thousand, and we hope to grow that to 50,000 soon as well.
And by the way, I just want to say, I don't know what this is. This is a horrific shot of dogs being transported
Yes.
while strapped in bags on top of a vehicle.
Yes.
Strapped in bags. And then they're just driving along the road with these animals on the roof, wrapped in bags.
Yes, and there's absolutely nothing to keep those dogs from falling off of the roof. They're not strapped on. They're strapped, their mouths are strapped shut. They're stuffed into sacks, but there is absolutely nothing protecting them from falling onto the ground and dying or becoming severely injured. And that was just something that our investigators spotted driving down the road. That was just, just randomly happening.
And whatever that is, whoever that is, that vehicle, we invite them on anytime. The name is up there. They're invited on Unchained TV at any time. Makes me embarrassed to be a human being. All right, Michael in Los Angeles, your question or thought for Lady Freethinker.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This topic today is very personal to me. I actually adopted a dog from South Korea that was rescued from the puppy mill. And, I love him to death, but he has issues. I can't imagine what he went through, since the time he was born, the abuse or whatever, because he definitely has some social issues. But I'm so thankful I was able to save him. But I want to thank Lady Freethinker for bringing so much attention to this issue. And my question is, I recall a few years ago there were several bills being introduced in order to either ask the governments in China or South Korea to end the dog meat trade, because I know this country, the U.S., is a country of dog lovers. So I was wondering, is there any news on what the updates on those bills are at this point?
Thank you very much for calling, and thank you for opening your heart and your home to a dog meat rescue. They are not the easiest dogs to adopt. They have a lot of trauma and they require a lot of patience, but I know they also have a lot of love to give. So thank you for doing that. As far as legislation goes, There have been some starts and stops. South Korea has had a number of bills proposed. Unfortunately, there is still no nationwide ban on the dog meat trade. However, I will say that the trade is dwindling there significantly. Very, very, very few people eat dog in South Korea anymore. Lady Freethinker's investigations were actually able to close down 2 dog meat auctions over the last couple of years, and the government stepped in and shut them down, which is fantastic. So while there is still no legislation banning it, explicit legislation, some would argue that it's already illegal under their livestock codes, but there is no explicit ban. They're making tremendous progress. China is a bit more difficult. I don't know of any pending legislation. There have been various statements by the government, particularly during the start of the pandemic. There were some statements that would imply a ban, but there is nothing that has been legally enacted, as far as I know. In the US, we did finally pass a ban on dog and cat meat a few years ago, because it actually was not illegal here until relatively recently. And I think when people started seeing, what was happening in other countries, we, took a look at ourselves and asked, well, why don't we have a law banning it? But we do now. We did also pass a resolution to denounce the dog and cat meat trade worldwide. A resolution has no actual binding power, but it is a strong statement. So, there are wins, there are sort of wins, but all in all, there is progress in the right direction on all fronts, thankfully.
All right, we've got one more caller, Sarah in Los Angeles. Your question or thought for Lady Freethinker as we strategize to help her campaign, her incredible campaign to stop this horrific dog meat trade in Sumatra through a petition campaign. And again, just sign the petition, people. It's on everything connected to this video, as well as just go to ladyfreethinker.org. We got somebody who's signing. I don't know what language that is, but this is a global network, and we have people from around the world watching. Yes.
Yeah, we need them all. We need everybody.
Yes, it's a global problem. Sarah.
Hi, how are you? I'm glad to be on today. I was wanting to know, are there any big campaign posters or billboards around showing possibly a piece of dog meat next to a piece of pig meat and doing like kind of a comparison? Because I feel like that could be helpful, where people always say, why love one but eat the other? It's almost like maybe you could show the ribs of a dog and the ribs of a pig or another animal to make a connection.
I love it. I think that's a fantastic idea. I have not seen that specifically, but I think that would be extremely powerful. Yes. And I bet most people couldn't tell the difference.
I think that's absolutely right, because if you look at what's going on, people get really outraged about this in the United States. And that's why I started out by saying, don't be pointing the finger. Okay. This is imagery of a pig factory farm from not so long ago. This happens to be in Canada, but I could show you other footage that from the United States, just as bad. So what do you make of here's from the United States. Okay. This is from the United States.
Inexcusable.
It's inexcusable. So what do you make of, people who get like really outraged about what's happening in the dog meat arena, which of course I am completely outraged, but I'm also outraged to what's happening to pigs and cows and chickens and turkeys and goats and lambs. What do you say to those people so that they can expand their circle of compassion to other animals beyond dogs? I call dogs the gateway drug to compassion for all animals.
Absolutely. My dog was my gateway drug. When I looked into my dog Peggy's eyes at 12 years old, I never ate a bite of meat again, just looking at her intelligence and her sentience. And my favorite message to get from a supporter is, I saw your dog meat investigation and I became a vegan. And that happens, and that's fantastic. And some people connect those dots on their own, and some people don't. And I think when people don't, we have to gently and with love and encouragement make an analogy and make a comparison. And there are various ways to do it. You can, after explaining what's happening in the dog meat trade, you can start talking about gestation crates or another aspect of what we would call farmed animal exploitation. And I do believe in being supportive and gentle, because most of us at some point in our lives also ate meat. And I think being respectful of people and where they are now is crucial to the mission. But I do think that comparison has to be made in some shape or form. We like to, we cover a lot of different issues at Lady Freethinker, and we like to juxtapose a dog issue with a farmed animal issue. And when you see them side by side, it makes it easier to connect those dots, certainly.
I want to go to another caller because we're about to hit a break, but we have one final caller. Annie in Sherman Oaks, your question or thought for Lady Freethinker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Thank you for having this show. My goodness, dogs are the connection, direct connection to everyone's heart. My babies are rescued, and they actually rescue us. In reality, we think we rescue them. So people can make this connection. But what do you think if there is a way for us to? I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, all animal agriculture is the reason, the igniting reason, the barbaric idea that we need to eat animals is the reason. What can we do to amplify? And it blew my mind to find out that we had 44 states that allowed dog meat too. Mm-hmm. And there's the horse meat and the other illegal meat. So what can we do to amplify it aside from signing Lady Freethinker Jane? I mean, this blows my mind. These babies are purest souls we can ever have. Better than any human I know. Their love is unconditional. We know this, but all animals are the same. The only reason we know about the dogs is because we have them in our homes. If we have a cow in our home, we'll know the same. The pig in our home will know the same. So sorry for the long message, but thank you. Love you for all you do. You're incredible for years. Love you all, both. And you both are heroes, and I adore you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie. Yes. Sign the petition. Like sometimes people say, well, what can I do? And I give them sign that petition right there. Okay, I'll do it later. No, do it now. Do it now. Okay, it's very easy. You can just go to ladyfreethinker.org and it's right there. Or the direct link to the petition is in the description to these videos, wherever you're watching it. But what else?
I would say point them to Unchained TV, honestly, because there is a wealth of information out there. Share things that you see that are impactful. Share them on social media. Bring a vegan dish to your next family gathering. The more that we educate people and show them that there are these alternatives and they don't have to even miss anything to cut animal products from their diet, the more minds we will change. And don't give up. The world doesn't change overnight, and I wish it would. I think I probably speak for a lot of people watching when I say that I wish change happened more quickly, but that's not the way of the world. So don't give up. Your voice makes a difference. Your actions make a difference. Everything you do is helping to bring us to that compassionate future that we want, and don't give up.
So on the other side of the break, we're going to take a short break on Voice America Radio, but we are staying live on all socials and the Unchained TV streaming network. Who is Lady Freethinker? What makes her tick? We are going to explore that on the other side of the break because she is a fascinating person. Stay right there. We're not going anywhere. All right. We are going to continue on. And thank you for those who say download Unchained TV. It's free. It's fun. Thousands of recipes. I always use this as an opportunity to plug our streaming network, which is 100% nonprofit, 100% free. You just put in Unchained TV on your phone, app store, and look. Thousands, literally now. My biggest problem. Yeah, we've got more and more, and Lady Freethinker and her incredible work is particularly featured. And, you know, I want to just give a shout out to Lady Freethinker because she is so supportive. I was filling out a form the other day and they said, who are your competitors and what are your competitors? And I said, I have no competitors. We all have the same mission. Right. And I said, Lady Freethinker is doing a little bit different, but she's a news organization. Plant-Based News is an organization. Veg News is an organization. One Green Planet, the Dodo. I don't want to leave anyone out. Vegan World. There's a million of them. Not enough, but there's quite a few. Let's put it that way. And if I've left anyone out, I apologize. But we all love each other. We all help each other. We are all friends because we all have the same mission. Exactly. And that is to wake up the world. We were both just at the incredible Vegan Women's Summit. I have a tour on Unchained TV that you can watch. It's featured right now. We just published it day before yesterday. What did you think of the Vegan Women's Summit?
I was in heaven. It was amazing. I had such a good time. I ate so much food. I think I gained 5 pounds in 2 days. But it was just so much delicious food. It was vegan everything. I definitely expanded my wish list for my wardrobe because there were some amazing vegan boots and purses that I definitely want in the future. And, especially it was just fantastic to see so many people who are making the world a better place and doing it in their own way. There are so many ways to be a vegan activist, to be a vegan entrepreneur, to change the way the world consumes and to shift away from animal products. There's so many ways and everyone's doing it in their own way and everyone converging like that into one big vegan powerhouse. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. And we're going to be coming back in a couple of seconds. But what I loved about it was there were so many people that I didn't know. When I first went vegan, like 27 years ago, I walk into an empty restaurant. I knew the waiter, the maitre d', the chef, because it was just the 4 of us.
Right.
Now I can't get a table. And when I went into the Vegan Women's Summit, they're, oh my God, this company, that company, this.
Yeah.
Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Yeah, I knew about a dozen people, including you, maybe a little bit more than that, but there were more than 1,000 people there.
Yeah, same.
This movement is growing so fast. And these are people who are coming up with products. Like there's a place for protests, there's a place for petitions, but there's also a place for really fantastic new products that they're coming up with. So I was blown away. I got myself a cactus leather jacket.
Oh, you did? You got one. I love the cactus leather.
And so, I just really was inspired by it. It gave me energy. It gave me energy. All right, we're coming back. Let's go back to our Voice America Radio broadcast, which of course is broadcast all over the internet, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and on and on and on. So we're ready to go whenever you are. Okay.
You are listening to Unchained TV. To reach the show today, call in to 1-866-472-5788. That's 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email in to jane@unchainedtv.com. Now, back to the show.
All right, we are so excited to have Lady Freethinker with us today. And, when I first started seeing the Lady Freethinker newsletters and things, I was like, who is she? This is like a superhero. Does she wear a cape and fly around at night. And was very tickled to meet you. And you are very down to earth, very humble, but you're doing a lot. We're going to talk about some of your other campaigns. But how did you come up with the name Lady Freethinker? Because it's got a mystique about it that I think is very cool.
Thank you. And I guess it does have a mystique because people always ask me, why Lady Freethinker? I was a philosophy major in college. I've always been about just thinking about the norms and systems and questioning things. And that's really where it comes from is, it's really about thinking freely outside of these sort of mental constraints that we have about what is normal, what is acceptable. And this is true of the way we treat animals, just as with many other social justice issues. When we kind of free ourselves from what we think we know and what we think is normal, that's when we can create real change. And that's really what it's all about.
Now, you have so many, honestly, I had to say, well, I got to stop. I can't just keep putting up one campaign after the other. We won't be able to talk about them all. But I want to talk about some of your successful campaigns. They're all close to my heart. But let's start with this terrible story about the goat. Now, it's a very complicated story, and there's a lot of legal issues surrounding it. But what's the basic story here involving this beloved goat, Cedar?
Yeah, so there is a legal case around this now. Thankfully, there's a fantastic, attorney representing the family. But, a little girl was a member of one of those, school agriculture clubs. And she grew attached to one of the goats who was part of the program, Cedar. And, ultimately, Cedar was to be slaughtered, as are the animals in these programs generally. She did not want Cedar to be slaughtered. And the family tried to stop it. They couldn't stop it. And Cedar was actually seized and killed like right afterwards. A very tragic story. This little girl, having to not only part with her, one of her best friends, but then to know that friend was slaughtered as though they didn't matter at all. That one's just heartbreaking. It really is.
And you did get a lot of petition signatures, more than 40,000, I believe. What did that do? What was the purpose of that regarding Cedar the goat?
I mean, the purpose is to first of all show the world and anybody involved in these programs that's absolutely not acceptable. That's not acceptable. And to show people that humans and animals, and in particular children and animals, form this bond, and it's cruelty. It's cruelty to tear them apart and kill the animal. It's just horrifying. It never should have happened.
I'm grabbing the article because you also, you do journalism, and you wrote an in-depth article on this, which really gave me a lot of insight into it.
Yeah.
And there was, we can't get too deep into the weeds, but the basic thing was that there was an overzealous response. According to the attorney for the little girl and her mom, there was an overzealous response by law enforcement that really went above and beyond, driving hundreds of miles to track down this goat, to get this goat, which gets my goat. I don't know if that species is, but it gets my goat. Why on earth would they think that was okay? And what are your thoughts, your opinion about what they did?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of resources and energy put into taking this goat away from the little girl is astonishingly ridiculous. I mean, I can't even fathom why, and I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine that there's some sort of perceived threat to a system that people don't want to be threatened, a system where animals that they see as food can also be viewed as family. Somehow that was threatening to them, and I'm not going to, put words in their mouths, but that's the only reason that I can think of, honestly.
And by the way, we invite anybody connected to the story, the people who are involved in this lawsuit on any time on Jane Unchained TV. We want to hear from you. I'll just say, quoting from your incredible article, the amended lawsuit also makes additional claims, including intentional infliction of emotional distress, retaliation, and an alleged violation of due process and the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, connected to law enforcement driving hundreds of miles, approximately 500 miles, to find this goat and take the goat to slaughter, even though the 9-year-old girl and her mom said, no, they had a change of heart. They didn't want to do that anymore. So, wow, we're going to stay on top of that one. But well done, a lady freethinker, getting more than 42,000 signatures on behalf of that little girl and the goat, who is, I say who, sadly no longer with us. So let's talk about a couple of others. We'll just run through them. Well, let's talk about victories, okay? Because you've had a lot of victories, but of course, we always end up with, well, we want to stop the next horror. So we're going to not talk about that victory, but horses, even though we supposedly love horses along with dogs and cats, are tremendously abused in our society. And you have a petition update here regarding a horrifying proposal to slaughter U.S. wild horses for food. You won. What happened there?
Right. Yeah. That proposal was never passed, thankfully. It's interesting what we do to our horses, which are, icons of America, right? Our wild horses, they are routinely rounded up by the Bureau of Land Management, by helicopter often, and these terrifying roundups where you have a helicopter just chasing these poor horses until some of them collapse and die. And then they corral them away, and some of them are auctioned off for slaughter. Now, they generally don't slaughter them in the U.S. They have to ship them to Mexico or Canada because it's not legal. But if that proposal had had its way, that might have changed. But thankfully it didn't. Thankfully, Americans do care about our horses, although not enough to stop the roundups quite yet. And that's an issue that that Lady Freethinker is continuing to work on. We have sent observers to witness these roundups and document them. Our observer has watched horses simply die, being chased by the helicopters. And the Bureau of Land Management, they have to allow observers there, but they place us so far away, literally miles away from where the horses are being rounded up. So it's very difficult to document. We're still doing it. It just takes a lot of expensive gear to do it, but it is still possible, thankfully. And we will continue to monitor that and continue to fight for these horses, not only to be spared from these horrible helicopter roundups, but to be spared from being shipped off to slaughter as well.
And why is this happening? Why is the Bureau of Land Management doing this?
Well, it always
co-opted by the meat and dairy industry. They want the land for animal agriculture. They want to chase the horses off so the horses aren't using that land that they would like to use. So if it upsets you, then you have to go back to, well, what's on my plate? Am I contributing to that? But please take it away.
No, exactly. So these horses have every right to be on that land, or they would have every right if not for the cattle ranchers who would prefer to have that as grazing land for their herds. So it all goes back to animal agriculture, as so many problems do. And unfortunately, these horses suffer and die so that people can have their meat and dairy. It's very sad.
And yeah, so it's really, sometimes we sound like a broken record, but it's true that literally 90% of society's problems, or 95%, if you remove that one false underlying assumption that we need to kill to survive, so many of our problems would melt away. And yet it's really hard to convince people because of the programming. Americans love their horses on paper, but then participating in activities that are decimating the wild horse population, even though there is a Wild Horse and Burro Act that is law in the United States that is designed to protect these animals, because our government and the agencies have been so co-opted by industry. It's a revolving door. The USDA is run by a dairy trade group leader, just for example. Okay. And it's his second time around as the USDA secretary. So of course they're going to be encouraging dairy, even though the global majority is lactose intolerant.
Right.
Even though the National Institutes of Health says 60% of people are lactose intolerant. Let me ask you this question. You know, you're working hard around the clock, showing all these horrors. Do you see progress?
Yes, I see progress, and I have every hope that the world is evolving in the right direction, and that the work that I do, that my team does, that you do, that every single person watching here does, is making a difference. It's slow progress. Let's just, make that clear. The world is not going vegan overnight. Factory farms are not disappearing overnight. But I'm seeing changes that I never saw before in the way that people perceive meat and dairy, for one thing, in the way that people perceive animals in general. There is more empathy, and we're living in a world where information is so much more global and accessible than it was before, and it is slowly making a difference. People can't just continue to ignore the images and the facts because they're surrounded by them. They're on social media, they're in your inbox, they're on news stories now. And the more that people become educated, the more people have alternatives, which, as we know, there are more vegan alternatives now than there ever were. The more likely people are to change, and people are changing. When I traveled to New York recently for the Vegan Women's Summit, and also for a family visit, I was very pleasantly surprised by the amount of vegan food I saw. And it had only been a couple of years since I'd visited New York. It's where I'm from. But there was more. Even in the past 2 years, there was more than I'd remembered. And that's progress. That's absolutely progress. My parents ate vegan the entire time I was there, which has never happened in my life. So something's happening. Something's happening. Absolutely.
Now, we only have a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you, I was also at the Vegan Women's Summit, and there was what I'd like to call cultured meat. It's meat basically without the animal. And I even have a photograph of an example of it, not the one that was at the Vegan Women's Summit, but here's an example. Does that look like meat? Yes, that looks every bit like meat, but that is what they call cultured meat. Basically, it's fermented. It's using either, this one I think uses a tiny little bit of a cell, and they ferment it. And there was another cell-based meat company there. And basically, she was saying that we're going to combine plant-based meat with this cell-based meat and create a food that can feed a lot of people, stop the habitat destruction, stop the human world hunger, stop the environmental devastation. What is your position on cultured meat, clean meat, animal-free meat, whatever you want to call it, meat that is either involving a tiny little like skin biopsy, or in some way takes cellular material from an animal and ferments vast amounts of what looks and tastes exactly like meat, but it is not from an animal. And the animal doesn't have to be killed or tortured?
I say bring it on. That is the future. That has to be the future. Meat Animal-free meat alternatives must be the future because that's the sustainable way. It's the cruelty-free way. It's the way that we're going to feed these billions of people into the future. And so I'm very excited to see that technology. I do think there are some hurdles, mostly mental hurdles, in getting people to accept it. But I think it will happen eventually. I think the word fermented is a lot more appealing than lab grown. Like they just kill that term forever, and they're not actually grown in labs, so it's a misnomer anyway. But no, I see the progress there, and I'm actually incredibly excited about it. Incredibly
Now,
excited.
somebody said, Donna Davila said, cultured meat is not for me. Let me be clear. I don't plan to eat it either because I didn't grow up eating meat. I was not born vegan, but we were sort of a pescatarian-ish household. So it's nothing I've ever craved. And now that I've been vegan 27 years, no, I'm not going to eat it. I don't desire that. But for the billions of people, and I think we all know the many people who say, I could never give up. I could never, never, never. I think it's you know, as Gene Bauer, the founder of a farm sanctuary, consider the father of the farm sanctuary movement, says, whatever reduces suffering the most, the fastest, right?
Right. And I don't crave meat either. I don't remember what it tastes like, so I would likely not eat the cultured meat, but I would try cultured cheese. Absolutely. You know, I would not have a problem with that at all, and I would you know, eat that over over cow's milk right now. That's for sure. You know, dairy was the hardest thing for me to give up, and as soon as they come out with an animal-free version of that, I will eat it. I absolutely will.
So I know none of us have a crystal ball, although I like to pretend I do sometimes. But I personally believe in the law of unintended consequences. My theory, and we only have like 2 minutes left, is I think climate change, nature is doing for us what we have not done for ourselves. Climate change is going to make animal agriculture much more difficult in the future. It's already happening. Animals are collapsing in the heat and the drought in the summertime. They're freezing to death in the wintertime as the temperatures become more extreme in either direction. At the same time, you have these plant-based alternatives and the cultured meat coming in. And I'm hoping that all of that will combine at a certain point to tip the scales. What is your thought on that?
100%. 100%. Tipping those scales. It's inevitable. It's on the way. The future is not going to involve killing animals for food, period.
You know, something you said that was very interesting. You said, well, I feel like we haven't evolved fast enough on this issue. You know, the moral arc of the universe is slow, but it bends toward justice. I believe Martin Luther King Jr. said that. But are we moving fast enough? Because we're racing against climate change. We literally are breaking boundaries that once the ice caps collapse, we can't order new ice caps on Amazon. It's over.
Absolutely true. We cannot order ice caps on Amazon. I hope so. I'm an optimist in that sense that I believe in human adaptability and ingenuity, and I think that we're going to wake up in time. I do.
Well, from your mouth to God's ear, as they say, whatever your beliefs are, we can all hope that we have a world that is peaceful and serene and filled with natural abundance, where nobody has to go hungry or no animals have to suffer. And, you know, this is right on the horizon. All we have to do is make that one change, and we all have the power to do it. That is why the powers that be are so threatened by it. Oh yeah, go ahead and rail against fossil fuels. We'll back you on that, because half the people protesting fossil fuels couldn't identify a fossil fuel if it was put in front of them. But the point is that what the powers that be really fear are the people taking back the power, which we can do 3 times a day on our plate. Last 30 seconds.
Thank you for watching. Jane, you're amazing. Thank you for having me on. I'm your biggest fan, and keep up the fight because we will win.
I believe we will. And I want to thank Lady Freethinker. She is also my biggest hero. I love what she's doing. And yes, it's a love fest because we're all doing what we can. But please visit ladyfreethinker.org. All of the petitions are there. You could have a petition binge and hit 50 or 60 petitions in one visit. So it's really, really easy to do. All you have to do is visit ladyfreethinker.org, sign the petition to end the dog meat trade, and sign all the other ones while you're there. But please get involved. Thank you so much. See you next time here on Unchained TV.